Thanks, Sham. Hi, everybody. Thank you. Well, hello there. All right, so Chum just told you some stuff about me, and I'll tell you a little bit more in a minute. But I just want to start out by asking, why do we come to things like this? Think to yourself, we do these networking groups. We're all a part of many of them. We sit at tables, we eat something, we talk to each other, and then we put somebody up here in front to talk to you for a while. And this is the main event. This is the thing. This guy talking or this woman talking is the main thing. Why do we do that? What are we trying to get out of it? I'm not really asking. You can think in your mind like, you know, what's the answer to that question? But think for a second. If I ask you, what are you expecting to get out of this today, or anybody who speaks, what's the answer? A lot of times people say information. They want to get information. They want to get things to take away that they can act on, bits of information about business, you know, skills that they can develop. They're looking for information. And I think that when someone who is speaking puts together the presentation, a lot of times they're thinking mainly about the information. They're thinking, what do I need to pack into this thing to make sure that the people out there get their information? They get stuff to take away, that they know more things afterwards. And so you end up with presentations that are loaded up with millions of things on the PowerPoint slides, presenters who turn and read the slides sometimes, and you get, you know, tons of information that's sort of hard to remember. You ever had that experience? You go away and you think, that person was great, but wait, what did they say again? What was it about? And then you have to refer back to the handouts, or you have to email them to send the slide deck to you. Could you just send me that slide deck? Because there was so much in there. And so I say, well, you know, if you could just email them the information, then why did you gather them together in a room to talk? So this applies, what I have to talk to you guys about today applies to both speaking in public, sort of a large room like this, big speaking events, as well as sales presentations that might be with 3 people that you're talking to or 1 person. Anything where you have to prepare in advance and then come and speak and you want a result at the end of it. Everybody in here does something like this, I assume, right? And many of you probably work on building your businesses from standing up and speaking the same way I'm doing right now, right? And would you all like to be a little better at it? Anybody here? Or would you like the people that you work with to be better at this? Maybe there's more of that. Everybody gets a little nervous about what I'm doing right now, I think. Not nervous for me right now, but but when you're doing it yourself. And think about it, Chum introduced me standing at this little podium here, and I was standing over there, right? And then I walked, whatever that is, 12 feet over here and stood here and started talking to you. I work with a lot of people presenting, and something happens in this 12 feet of floor space. Have you ever noticed that? They're over here, and they're like a person with a personality. They're like talking and, you know, making jokes and like loose and talking, and then they get introduced and they walk over here. And it's different somehow. Hello, we are now having a very serious business meeting, and I'm here to go through my slides with you. And everything goes like that for a while, and at the end of it, they go back over there and go, oh, that was terrible. I was so nervous. And then the personality comes back. So this happens, right? Something in this, it's the same room, though. It's the same room over there as it is here, but something happens. And I work with people, you know, in little workshops that I may only have 12 of them at the workshop, and they have to sit at that chair and then walk like 2 feet to here and present, and they freak out. And then they sit down. So there's something about this that makes people nervous. And I break it down really to 2 things, which I'm going to talk about with you today, preparation and performance. Just 2 things. How you prepare affects how you perform. And I'll cover the preparation stuff first, but it's how you build it. Are you building it with, like I said before, we're looking for information, but information is only interesting if it has insight in it. The personality of the person who's speaking needs to come across for that information to mean anything. And that's the performance. Build it for retention so that we remember what you say. Not in a handout, but in the PowerPoint, but in just how you told the story and how you presented it. That's all going to make the whole thing a better situation. So if you're all looking for getting a little better at this, or the people you work with, let's talk about that. And I'm going to give you a chance at the end to take a step toward getting a little better right away. All on board with this? Yes? Yes! Very good. Thank you, Rick Brimacombe. All right. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, too. How did I get into this? Well, I come from the world of theater. I'm an actor and a director. Have worked in town a lot of times at Park Square, which is right down the street here. I've also worked at Chanhassen Dinner Theater, the Guthrie Children's Theater Company. I also have my own theater company with 2 other actors in town called Torch Theater. And just producing and performing and directing and writing lots, although in the last 12 years, well, now LinkedIn tells me it's been 13 years that I've been doing this, I have worked less in theater and more actually with people on presenting. That all started because as an actor, I do voiceovers and commercials and instructional films. And back however many years ago it was, I was doing an instructional film for Hartford Life Insurance. And it was just an instructional film where I was playing John Russell, the agent. And this was like totally old school. So it was John Russell, the agent, comes to your house, sits you down, and husband and wife, Dave, Susan, good to meet you. Now, Susan, if Dave were suddenly to become disabled or, God forbid, lose his life, how would you pay that mortgage? It's that film. It's that training film. And so Susan freaks out for a while, and then I bet you would really like a mortgage protection life insurance policy, right? So that was I did 3 of these, and didn't think a thing of it. And on the shooting of the 3rd one, the VP of marketing who's in charge of this whole division, comes up to me and says, "You're so good in these videos. We send them around the country to teach the guys what's in the presentation. But the managers are also telling the guys, when you do the presentation, be like that guy in the video, because he's so convincing." And the thing was, I wasn't a life insurance. I had no idea what I was talking about. But I was really convincing doing it, you see. So he said, "Would you like to come to London for our national sales convention and teach our guys about being convincing like you are in the video?" And at that point, I had been an actor for many years, been a teacher of acting for many years, but had never worked with anybody outside theater. This is, 13, 14 years ago. Never worked with anybody outside theater. Had no idea how to do what he was asking me to do. And as convincingly as I could, looked him straight in the eye and said, "Yes, I would love to come to London, train your guys about this very thing." So I did that, and then I worked out a curriculum that worked for life insurance, and they sent me all over the country for 4 years just teaching people about that. But along the way, I realized it's not just the performance. It's not just that acting, convincing piece. I mean, yeah, that's a piece of it, but it's also how you put together the material, which at that time, they didn't let me touch the material. Now I work with people on that too. So that's what I want to talk about with you today, okay? First of all, preparation. How you put this thing, whatever it is that whether it's a sales presentation or appeal to a board of directors, whether it's just other members of your team, people that work with you, anything that carries influence or the possibility of persuasion sort of has to be constructed a certain way. And the first thing I want to talk about is the objective. Now, when you do a sales presentation, the objective, of course, is get the sale. But if you go in with that objective all over you, are you going to get that sale? No, because they're going to be like, all this person wants is to make a sale. So that's, yes, the objective. But you have to be in a different mindset that's aiming for a different type of objective in order to get that sale, wouldn't you say? And that's where it gets a little bit tricky. When actors work on a scene, they have to use objectives too. Tennessee Williams or Arthur Miller or Shakespeare wrote those words. You can't change the words. But if you've seen these plays on stage, you can see Romeo and Juliet, Death of a Salesman, Streetcar Named Desire. You can see those plays, exact same lines, and either the scenes come alive or they're dead. Same lines. And so that's because in rehearsal, we're both memorizing the lines, but also working on playing different objectives in the scene. What is one character trying to get out of the other character? And this territory is very fluid. You can keep changing the objectives and make the scenes come alive. The same thing applies to doing presentations. You can have an active objective or a dead objective, and it's going to change how that presentation comes across. So for instance, that's an objective that someone might have in their presentation. This is the default. Like, you haven't really thought about it. And you've just gone out there with this objective. I want to tell the prospective client about our company. Now, is this a presentation you want to be at? No, because they're going to tell you about something. And it's going to just sort of come across that way because that's the internal sort of engine that's going on underneath it is sort of not running very strong. As opposed to, I'm going to motivate the prospective client to engage with our company. So you want to sort of see that. How are they going to try to do that? They're going to engage me or not? And as a presenter, it's more active. It has more life to it. I'm going to motivate you to engage with. Okay? Here's another one. I want to walk leadership through the plan. So I'm going to stand here. I'm going to go through some slides. We're going to start with the first thing, which is going to move on to the second thing, which will be followed by the third thing. And before you know it, the audience is ahead of you. You're being walked through something, and leadership's going, I don't have time for this. So what's another way to do it? And this, like I say, all this is just mindset, is think of the exact same presentation as I'm going to persuade leadership to buy into the plan. So now something's happening. It's active. Something's going on in the room. Now these are, I'm not saying these are correct or anything. This is just moving the language that you think in about your own presentation from inert to active. So inert would be, I'm going to inform you about something. I'm going to make you aware. I'm going to cover all of the parts of this new policy that we're going to implement. Okay? I'm going to go over things. Or I would even add into this, teach and educate. I'm going to educate the client about how much better a company we are than everybody else. And as soon as you say educate, although education, of course, can be very dynamic, but sometimes we use the word educate or teach to be pontificate and stand and lecture, which nobody likes. So see these pieces of paper in the middle of your table here? Grab one of these. There should be enough for everybody. And turn it over on the back side, or the side that has this sort of grid on it like this. Okay? And I want you right now to think about a presentation that you often have to give. Some kind of sales presentation maybe, or something where you're talking to your team or your associates. Think about a presentation that you often have to give, or one that's coming up in a week or two, or something like that. Think about what that is right now. Identify something. And then move to the next box, the objective, and I want you to right now write down your objective for that presentation, okay? Trying to use some of these verbs that say inspire, motivate, persuade, energize, excite. You could also use things like reassure, or I've heard a good one, equip, okay? Just write a sentence that captures the objective of your upcoming presentation or your regular presentation that you give. And then if you get that done, take a minute and go to the next box, key message. Can you sum up your presentation in one sentence? Not two, and not one big, long, unwieldy sentence either. Just one simple sentence that sums up what you're trying to do with this presentation. And write that sentence down. We won't do the rest of this sheet. We're just going to do these two boxes. All right. You can keep writing, and anybody who's done, who wants to shout one out? Tell me what you got. A very shy group. No, go ahead. Okay, you can do the next one, okay?
All right, so I work for a company I won't name, so you have to figure it out through the message.
Okay.
Topic, holiday parties.
Holiday parties.
Okay, holidays are coming up. Objective, how we can take the stress out of the holidays and create wow at your next party.
Okay, so objective. So you started with how. How we can take stress out of the holidays and add wow to your next party? Is that what it is? Okay. Good. So if you were, what are you trying to do to the listener?
See if they have holiday parties coming up.
That's before the presentation. So once they say, yes, we do, and we really want to listen to you, what are you trying to do to them?
Interest them in taking the stress off their hands and planning the event.
Okay, so you will this sounds like sort of a reassure type of thing. You're trying to reassure them that you've got it covered and that they're going to be okay. Okay? So I'm just slightly changing the wording a little bit to get in the mindset of what you're doing to the person. So as soon as you say, we're going to show you how, it's still kind of on your side without including them. And if you say, I'm going to reassure you, or I'm going to calm you down, calm your worries, then you're doing something to them. Do you see the distinction I'm making? And then something active is happening in the room. And again, it's just, you never say this sentence to anybody. This is just for you and your mind to say, I'm going to go in there and what am I going to do to them or do for them? But what's really good about what you've got there is that it's already in client-based language. It's not about you, it's about them. So you've already done that, and that's usually the hardest part of this. And I'm just making a little tweak about making it a little bit more active. All right, the one that was over here? Yeah.
My topic is worksite wellness, and my objective is I want to inspire you to enhance employee well-being.
Great.
The key message is empower employees with sustainable, healthy lifestyle habits.
Okay, that's all working really nicely. So you're inspiring and empowering all the way through this, which is in what you do, it's already inspirational and empower. Like the very thing that you're doing is that. So it's a pretty automatic fit. But you have got it nicely worded down to just a couple of words there. Who's got one more we can look at? Now you're all shy. Yeah.
So my topic is physical education. So my objective is I want to empower my clients to educate their people about financial issues.
Okay, empower them to educate their people about financial issues. And then what's your key message?
Like the key message is that everyone can learn something.
A little bit more specific.
Okay.
What else? What would you add to that? Because that's a little broad. Everyone can learn something. Sure. Yes. So add some more language that says about, that zeroes it in on your topic.
Sure. So everyone can learn something about financial education.
Okay. Do you have a particular thing in your talk that you zero in on in it?
No,
Oh, okay. It's customized for each. Oh, I see. Okay, it makes sense. All right, so these two steps, these objective and key message steps, are steps people never take. They never usually do this. You don't usually sit down and fill this out. But the act of having to do it and be specific about it focuses your mind in on what exactly you want to accomplish in that presentation, and it's a really good step. And then after that, I say break it down into 3 parts. So you have Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. You may have 29 things that you want to cover in 20 minutes. But if you go up here and say, I'm going to cover 29 things now, people go, ugh. It's like, what? What? Yeah, you're just covering, you're going through a whole bunch of things. Grouping them into parts, like I made mine preparation and performance, so 2 parts. You can make 2, you can make 3, maybe 4, but never more. Groups so that people get the sense that they're hearing a very manageable amount of material, not this whole unwieldy thing that's like 29 parts long, okay? So that's what the rest of that sheet is about, but we don't have time to go into it right now. I'm just saying that's the next. Blocking out things into groups is a great way to make it more comprehensible when the day comes. And then there's openings. How you open. Are you opening with something that grabs people's attention in some way? Or are you opening in the traditional, thank you, it's really great to be here, and here's a whole list of things that I've done. Here's my resume and everywhere, and all the certificates that I have, and some other things that, or my favorite, here's the background on my company. We started 110 years ago as a small, these 2 guys had an idea, and and 5-10 minutes gets spent on that, and everybody's like, what are you here to talk about? As opposed to starting with something that has impact, a question to the audience, a story that you tell, energy, like this movie. This is what filmmakers do. You've all seen Indiana Jones, I assume. And the great opening scene where he tries to get that idol and then puts that little bag of sand down and thinks he's okay, but then it triggers all these traps, and he's running and running and running, and then finally this huge ball tries to chase him, tries to run him down, and he barely escapes and jumps out of the cave, and you go, this is going to be an exciting movie. Then later they have scenes that tell you he's an archaeologist and he's looking for this grail and he works in a university, and you get that information later, where logically it seems like that should be first. But no, in a movie, grab their attention. And then the whole time that you're going through these sort of slower history scenes, you're going, yeah, but we're getting back to the action, right? Because you've been conditioned to think action is coming. Same thing can happen in a presentation. Condition the audience to think it's about them. They're here to talk about something that's about you, and I'm going to maybe give you some background on the way, but we're getting back to you. And then they tend to stay more engaged. And that's really, it doesn't have to be big, splashy Hollywood level opening, but something that grabs people's attention and makes them sit up and say, this is going to be relevant. Of course, telling stories is a great way to open. Telling stories is a great way to have it put in anywhere. I once worked with a client at a learning and development company, and they thought it would be an awesome idea for they had a company meeting with their key clients. They invited 100 or so of their key clients for this meeting, or just an event. And they thought it would be awesome to send Molly out there because she was a sales rep and she'd really know the territory. So they said, yeah, let's send Molly. She should be the master of ceremonies and kind of run this whole thing out there on stage because she's a sales rep. They didn't really take into account that Molly hated public speaking. Just filled her with nothing but nausea and anxiety. So they called me and they said, can you help with that? And I was like, well, yeah. But why did you choose this in the first place? But that's another story. So I'm in the room alone with Molly, just the two of us, nothing to be nervous about. And we're sitting in chairs, and I say, Molly, just go over there. Just go over there on the other side of the room, and just so you're standing up, and just start telling me about the company. And she gets up, and she's like, I hate this so much. And she kind of crawls over there, and then she starts to kind of try and recite some things from the website. That history of the company stuff. And I went, okay, Molly, great, let's sit down. Come back and sit down. Tell me about some clients you've worked with. Some clients for whom you have solved their problem. And she starts easily telling me all kinds of clients where they had a problem she solved for them. And I said, great, these are stories. And now we worked out how to tell these stories. And then I started to have her go on the other side of the room and just tell these stories, perfectly comfortable and fine. And we worked out, shaped the stories and then sent her out on stage for the big day. And she was fine out there. And the clients got more out of it, and everybody, benefited. And it all kind of came down to telling stories. Like, can you come up with a story that captures what your company is about? So I like to work with people on finding everybody has stories, but finding them, digging into your brain and figuring out where are the best stories, that takes a little work. And then you get them, and you find that all a story really needs to be is a character or characters who have an event that happens where change takes place. That's it. That's a story. That's Grandma's story at the Thanksgiving table. That's telling what you did last weekend, and that's War and Peace. And Hamlet. They're basically all based on this structure. You can come up with stories of what's happened with clients that you've worked with that are the best representation of what you do as a company. It's better than saying the back history and everything. You give an example of what you've actually done. If anybody in here is doing speaking as a way of building your business, put some stories in. It seems obvious, but you got to think to do it and then work them out so that they can work on the day when you need to tell the story, and they don't get unwieldy, Because mental images are the best way to transfer information. Yeah? Is it okay if the story is sad, she says? I would say, of course, sad stories are a part of life too. But it depends on what your objective is. You go back to yours was to inspire and empower people to be for wellness, right? So your sad story might be a lead up to say, that sad story could have been prevented by, and I assume that's what your context is, yeah. Then of course it's fine. The danger would be if it's where it's positioned in the presentation might emphasize the sadness and not emphasize the wellness, and that would be all about positioning. I'd have to look at the whole thing to figure that out. But by no means would I say a blanket statement. All stories have to be happy. There can be sad ones sometimes, and that's fine. Now, there's another thing I want to say though, is that sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to tell a story where it's like up A story technically is like a person or people, something happened to these people, and you tell about that, and that's a story. Sometimes you just have numbers. But I think there's a way to make numbers sort of feel like a story. So for example, you might be tempted to put up this kind of a slide. We've all seen that slide before, right? And people look at it and they go, oh, this is going to be terrible. And the thing is I can talk forever about what's on this slide, but you're going to be distracted looking at the slide trying to figure it out for yourself. And you won't really be paying attention to what I'm saying, and you just sort of, I'm that annoying voice that you'd wish would go away so you could just read the slide. But you could give him this slide instead. See that one? Blank, empty space. Nothing but potential. What's he going to do with this? And then I can say, look, in 2006, there were 2,788 retail firms. And you go, yeah. And then I give you the next piece, and I say, in 2007, there were 2,691 retail firms. And what have you now noticed? They're going down, and are you wondering anything? Why? And are you also wondering something else? What's the next one going to be? And so I show you the next one, and now I'm going to be talking about the reasons and all, satisfying all that, but you're also looking at this going, what's the next one? Does this trend continue? Oh, it does! Look at that! And it continues and continues. But look at how I have all the sales numbers are not up there yet. So you're wondering again, what's up with that? What's going to happen with that? Then I show you the sales numbers for that 2006 year. Okay, that's that number. And then 2007, look at this number. Are you thinking something now? Oh, she's already got an answer for why this is. It's e-commerce. So you're wondering why, and maybe that's what it is, but you're also probably wondering again, does the trend continue? And I say, oh, look, it does. And then we continue with this, and all of a sudden this potentially very boring slide, which was this originally, becomes something that's dynamic and alive because the presenter is doing the very, very, very basic storytelling thing, which is make people wonder what's going to happen. You've never seen a television show that you liked where you didn't wonder what was going to happen, right? I mean, TV shows especially are based on that idea, that construct, because they have to get you to come back after the commercial, or they have to get you to come back next week. So they always have to make you wonder, how's this going to turn out? A situation has unfolded that's not resolved, and I got to tune in to find out how it's going to resolve. You can do that in something as dull as a list of numbers. Yeah? Oh, you sure could present it as a graph. And I mean, you could tell the story. Yeah, I've done this whole piece of my presentation as a pie chart. Sometimes you do a pie chart where it's just like nothing, it's just the blocks of color, but no indications of what any of the blocks of color are. And then you do them one at a time, and everybody's like, what's that big one? What's the big one? You know? So the key to whether you use a graph or a pie chart or whatever is to leave out information that makes people wonder how it's going to turn out. And then you have to sort of create it in a way that does tell a story, that makes something interesting happen. This happens to work with this list of numbers, and a different situation might have something else. When I work with lawyers, a lot of times it's, you know, when you introduce the evidence in or the pieces of the puzzle in the opening statement. Are you going to get to the micro details right away, or are you going to make them wonder about something and then introduce that detail when they're now curious? It's the art of like piquing people's curiosity is what good storytelling is all about. All right, so that was all in a whiz-bang, whatever that was, 15 minutes. Whole bunch of stuff on preparation. Of course, that's something that usually could take a lot of time to work out by individual case basis. But that's essentially what goes into preparing something very similar to what a playwright does when they're working on creating a play for an audience. Now the performance end of it, the standing and talking part of it, that's once you've got it prepared, well, show up and think, how can I use this room to my advantage? So for example, right here in this room, that's a podium. I'm over here. Because as soon as anybody goes up and stands behind the podium, we're all at an awards ceremony, right? Or a funeral, or, you know, I mean, something where you go, oh, this is really formal, and and it sort of tells you how you're supposed to behave, which is check out and think about something else. But as soon as you're not behind the podium, it changes the dynamic of the room. And ideally, I would also walk around sometimes in the room. Keep the notes in front of you. These are my notes. This laptop right here has the next, it's in presentation mode, so I can see the next slide that's coming. And I never have to look down or shuffle paper. I just can glance over here, and you barely even notice that I do it. So it's just like, oh, I know what's next, and now I'm talking, and I can effortlessly say, well, the next thing is going to be this slide that I already know what's coming. And that's by having the notes in front of you. Consider alternate seating arrangements, which we've already got going on in here with the round tables. As soon as you have them in rows, like is in the picture there, people kind of mentally go to 7th grade. And it's like, Mr. Boylan's algebra class, and I don't want to be here. So as soon as you rearrange the room in like a horseshoe shape or round tables or something else, it automatically makes people think differently. And then move around. You can change the picture. I can't really move too much because they have a camera going. But move around in the space, can change the picture. The power position in the room is different in every room, where you're going to triangulate with your audience and make it so that you can be open to these people here as well as there at the same time. You got to find that in every room. And then, of course, face as I look at the screen to say, oh yes, face out. Face out, and not be reading everything off of a slide. Actors on stage have 2 tools, as every human being has had since the dawn of time: voice and body. Only more recently has it become voice, body, and PowerPoint. For millennia, it's been voice and body, and so we tend to respond to the way the vocal inflection that's going on really in sort of a primal way. So when somebody doesn't have any vocal inflection and they keep all of their words down here in sort of one tone that's going at the bottom of their range, and there's very little investment, we tend to call that monotone. Even though technically it isn't, because monotone would be like a robot in one tone all the time. But we say monotone because the feel of it doesn't change. But monotone could also be always being excited all the time, way up here all the time. That could also get to be monotonous. So it's the changing of the tone that makes people reinvest their interest. But there's some things that can kill that. So for instance, I say the chop, the nosedive, and question speak. So going like this. The chop, regardless of the project delivery method, our focus is on providing the best value for the budget. And it goes on. Ever heard that one before? William Shatner? Yeah. Shatner acting, yes. Pause acting. So there's that. It breaks it up, and it makes things sound like hesitant all the time. Presentation courses will tell you things like, don't say and ah. Well, I say, yeah, okay, we don't like to hear and ah, but the remedy for that is not to focus on and ah, because as soon as it's like, don't think of an elephant. As soon as you're thinking of the thing, it's going to multiply. So the way to remedy saying and ah is to know what you're talking about. Really. Know your objective, know your key messages, know what's going on in your presentation, and practice it, and miraculously the ums and ahs kind of go away, and any ums and ahs that you do say, nobody notices. Accomplished speakers say and ah sometimes, but you don't notice because you're following the forward movement of their thought. Another one to avoid here is the nose dive. Regardless of the project delivery method, our focus is on providing the best value for the budget. We believe in the most successful projects are those that start with collaborative planning and communication from the very beginning. And the very next thing I'm going to say is going to do just the same thing and kind of end up down here like this. And your ears are constantly hearing a downward inflection, which makes you just go, time for bed, you know. Or vocal fry, which is the kind of more youthful version of this, which is like this. Regardless of the project delivery method, our focus is on providing the best value for the budget. We believe the most successful projects are those that start with, and it gets into that place there, which is actually bad for your voice. But it's also just makes you sound kind of dumb. So you might want to avoid that. And then there's the other sort of teen one, but it creeps into adults' language too, question speak. Regardless of the project delivery method, our focus is on providing the best value for the budget. Do you sound like an authority when you speak like that? And how many question marks are up there on the screen? None, but I added that upward inflection, which always sounds like a question, and in between that is what we call subtext in theater. You know, the subtext is not, I am the best person for this job, and I'm an authority, I'm going to take care of you. The subtext is, do you like me? Is my hair okay? Which doesn't really, you know, inspire confidence. So these little things creep in. I see that one. Sometimes you all think, oh, I never do that. But then you're going to get on the phone later and maybe make this phone call. Hi, this is David, and I'm calling with a really important company. And I just have some things I wanted to go over with you now. Is this a good time to talk? I've heard that a lot, on especially initial client calls where you're sort of prospecting or you don't know the person very well. Because the subtext is, I'm really sorry for upsetting you. This probably is a bad time. I should call back. Should I call? I'll call back. And that's happening in between the words without that downward vocal inflection which says confidence. You know, regardless of the project delivery method, our focus is on providing the best value for the budget. So you're just stating it. You're saying the whole thought and stating it. All this little stuff can be worked out with some attention paid to it. Your body also is telling, whether you're sitting at a table or standing in front of people, you still have a body that's attached to your words, right? And that body is sending a bunch of we all know about body language. The main question that I get, though, from people presenting standing up is, what do I do with my hands? So the hands, these two things, these appendages here that are attached right here, are so useful in daily life. Holding things, shaking hands, waving. They're really handy for that. Handy, as a matter of fact. But then you start presenting, and it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And you know, people do all kinds of weird stuff with their hands when they don't know what to do. They'll be just playing, like the hands will go like this. Or if there's a click pen around, click, 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 click. Or in the pockets, jangling the change. Or if you are behind a podium, thank goodness there's this podium here. Hanging on for dear life to this life raft. Or I am going to talk to you now from my perch on the battlements, you know, is what this looks like. So where your hands are can tell a story because your head is on top of your body. Profound, isn't it? But your head is on top of your body, meaning you can't actually see what's going on down here, meaning a whole bunch of things can be happening down here in body land that you don't even see, but your audience does. And this is telling you a big story. The story being, I'm super nervous. So I say find a ready position for your hands, and these are some suggestions. You know, this kind of like the open fingers, or what I like to call the infomercial. Consolidate your credit by calling 1-800. But it works. This can work. Light touch with the hands like this can work. Just sort of 90-degree bend in the elbow is important because this is nice and active and energized but relaxed. This is, I'm hiding something. It's the fig leaf. And this, if it goes up the other way, it's grandma with a purse crossing the street. I'm so scared. But it can happen. I've seen people start this way and then get to talking and just not even realize that now they're down here doing this. Or they start doing this weird thing. I have a little birdie that I'm cradling. I mean, weird stuff can happen. So you want to be thinking, nice relaxed position with the arms can say professional but relaxed at the same time. So these are just little tips. I work with people all the time on this stuff. Practice is the only way to get better at it. You cannot listen to a lecture for 40 minutes or 6 hours or however long. Listening to me talk about it is never going to make anybody better at this stuff. These are some principles, but I like to work with people. So on the middle of your table, There is a half sheet that says request for consultation. I would like to make myself available. Fill that out if you'd like. If you have some questions about your own presenting or your team or somebody that you work with and getting better at big presentations in a big room or just one-on-one, sales, whatever it is, give me a call, an email. We can sit down and talk about that and work out whatever you have going on for yourself in a couple of minutes, and hopefully connect for some future activity. That's all they've given me time for today to speak to you, although I'd love to speak more. Thank you very much. Thank you.